Discrimination has happened through a very long time, such as in our educational system and our everyday life. This leads to my quotation from Andy Warhol. Warhol? They always say that time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. My interpretation of this quotation is that you have to step up to yourself in order for you to make these wanted changes. I agree with this quotation, and to support this, I'm going to talk about educational segregation, Martin Luther King Jr., and fashion. In our educational system, there has been a lot of segregation between the ethnicities of Mexicans and Caucasians. For example, in 1855, when the mining companies were bringing Mexicans over here to the United States, they started making this educational system for both races. But they started seeing that it's not a good thing to make them equal to them, so they had to make them feel inferior to them. That is why they segregated them and made a different school for them. But the one thing that did change the United States, in which led to discrimination, has been the Lemon Grove case, in which the schools were segregating the Mexicans and Caucasians because their excuse was they weren't as competent as the American children here, and that they had more knowledge than them, and that the language was a barrier, and so much more excuses that were part of this and were more of a thing to discriminate such individuals. They led to obtain a law which prohibited segregation, and without this change and without these so much people fighting for this and going to marches and doing so many things to stop this, they helped other people, other individuals in this situation. My second topic is Martin Luther King Jr., in which he sets an example to not discriminate anybody based on their race or their color. He stood up with the black community and wanted to have equal treatment. He never thought how much of a historical mark he would have made, and by doing so, he helped so many people, such as an individual, Rosa Parks. She was, back in the day, African Americans had to sit in the back of the bus, and the Caucasians in the front of the bus. That made them that segregation and also that discrimination through just human beings. But Rosa Parks did not stop there, and she was inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. and decided to stand up to herself and go to the front of the bus and not make her move out of that. Although she did go to jail after that because it was against the law for that back in the day. All of these things that they have done have changed the law and have made a history and have made changes. And now that different races are being put down and marked for how they look and stuff, are now based upon and thrown away because they don't want that history to come back, and they fought so much for it to just get rid of it. Fashion also has made, this is my next topic, which fashion would be that many individuals, such as teen high school children, are more worried about the way that they look and very judgmental if other people don't have that brand name clothes or that swagged out look, and if they don't look a certain way or dress a certain way, they're kind of like pushed aside and not taken into consideration. Therefore, all these individuals are being pushed aside and bullied, and of course you would have never thought that fashion would have been of value to, discriminate these individuals. By making such changes, these teens and everything has made an important mark for these individuals, and caring for them and doing something else other than that. Which leads to the quotation of, you got to make your own change. If you don't do it, then no one else. Like, for example, other things with other cases, if you don't do something different, then it's not going to be changed. And time isn't going to change it by yourself. In conclusion, I talked about the segregation of individuals the discrimination, and how fashion as well can be led to changing like the history and changing the way of life. Leading back to my quotation, they always say that time changes things, but they actually have to change them yourselves, by Andy Warhol. I agree with this quotation, because if people do not make a change, then no one will ever make a change for themselves.